Hey guys, tonight we take an enchanting stroll through the bustling streets of a medieval town where the aroma of freshly baked bread mingles with the cool evening air. In these times, bread wasn't just a staple, it was your lifeline. You probably won't survive this era if you're not skilled in the art of baking. Imagine your heart racing as a stranger knocks at your door, not to barter or buy, but to weigh the loaf you've just baked. This isn't a friendly check-in, it's a matter of public trust. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love it if you'd also share where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. In this quaint medieval town, you find yourself in the early morning hours when the streets are still kissed by the dew of night. The sun's first light peeks over the rooftops, painting everything in a golden hue. You lace up your shoes, ready to explore the town's market square. As you wander, you notice the hustle of bakers setting up their stalls. The scent of bread, warm, inviting, is everywhere. Every loaf has its own distinct character, shaped not just by the ingredients used, but by regional techniques and personal flair. The bread was known as a universal existence. The saying, "Bread is the staff of life," held true more than ever. It was sustenance, but it was also a symbol of status. Consider the intricate loaves with finely sifted flour reserved for the wealthy. Meanwhile, coarser whole grain loaves were the sustenance of the common folk. On this vivid morning, you stumble upon old Matilda's stall. She is renowned for her honey wheat bread that locals swear by, assured that a slice of it will give them the strength of an ox for the day's work. With each loaf, she tells a story of her family, the grains, and oftentimes the varied witnesses of history itself in the fields where the wheat grew. One fact rings clear: bread played a critical role in societal function. It's widely noted that bread prices could spark frenzy and even revolt. Take the time during the French Revolution when bread indeed sparked rage that spread through the streets like wildfire. Sensing your curiosity and perhaps your modern weariness with supermarket bread, Matilda shares an old adage with a twinkle in her eye. Bread and water, these are nature's gifts. But a loaf slightly off in its weight could mean worse than coal in your stocking. She chuckles softly, handing you a piece to taste. The texture, soft and chewy, melts in your mouth, a testament to her craft, honed over a lifetime. You pivot away from Matilda's stall as town criers begin to sing morning proclamations. The fairest bread for the fairest coin echoes through the square, a gentle reminder that in these times, cheating the weights of bread could land you in serious trouble. Historians still debate whether the baker's fear of the Assize of bread and ale, a law regulating the price, weight, and quality of bread, remained effective over the centuries. But one conclusion is unarguable: this was serious business. Imagine trying to stretch your rations, the council keeping their watchful eyes on your scales, intrigued to see what would happen if one's bread didn't meet expectations. Your feet guide you toward the old stone bakery behind the square, where whispers tell of a baker who once got caught sailing a little too close to the wind. In hushed voices passed down, it's said that the dishonesty drove him to the stocks in the center of town, a somber and cautionary tale against the backdrop of today's bustling market, filled with the symphony of life and sustenance. You walk on engrossed by the undertones of history. Stories like these breathe life into the cobblestones beneath your feet, each one richer with the tales of bakers before. The air grows warmer, and the smells shift, with it more caramelized, earthy, as you delve deeper into the lively vein of this medieval hub. With every beat of the town's heart, you're reminded of how central bread was in weaving societies together, nurturing bodies, mending spirits, and serving as a vessel for both hope and law. The idea of a simple loaf being more than food, a bridge between the living history and you, a traveler across time. As the market starts to dwindle with the afternoon sun, you find yourself reflecting on this intricate dance. Bakers, vendors, and townsfolk all playing their parts, their lives intertwined with the humble loaf that sits quietly, almost unassumingly, at the heart of their livelihoods. The day wanes gently into late afternoon, leaving you with thoughts as warm as fresh bread. You make your way through winding cobbled streets, still savoring the morning's discoveries like a treasured story told by a fireside. Shadows stretch across the town, and shopkeepers gradually pull their shutters down, marking another close. The townsfolk return to the solace of their homes, their faces marked not only by the day's labor, but by centuries of tradition. As you make your way back, you find yourself walking past Matilda once more, who now hums a soft tune, sweeping away crumbs and memories with her well-worn broom. She gives you a knowing nod, the kind shared by those who understand the richness of the simple life. You leave feeling a part of her enduring narrative, the essence of which lingers even as the market stalls fade into dusk. And thus, your journey through this medieval tapestry completes its circle for tonight. These stories, these lives echo through time like a familiar lullaby, entwining with your modern world, while laying its roots in history's embrace, just as the town has offered with its steadfast wisdom and gentle spirit. As you wander through the dimly lit cobblestone streets of a medieval European town, you can almost feel the weight of time in the chill air. The old townsfolk, wrapped in their thick cloaks, go about their business, a hint of fresh bread wafting subtly from the distant market square. In the heart of this bustling town lies a tale as warm and comforting as a nightly loaf, yet rigorous in its historical importance. A tale about bread that's been whispered through generations, with a hint of light sarcasm woven into its crust. The Assize of bread, one of the earliest consumer protections in medieval Europe, regulated the weight, price, and purity of bread sold in towns across the land. Imagine families gathering around modest tables, tearing into crusty loaves that tell stories of wheat fields and millstones, a ritual as ancient as storytelling itself. Yet despite the comforting aroma and familiar sight, buying bread was not without its drama. You see, medieval times didn't come with the convenience of package labels or health inspectors. Instead, society depended on laws like the Assize of bread to keep bakers honest and the townspeople well fed. However, not every loaf turned out as expected. Under the watchful eyes of officials, your bread's worth might be questioned. Back then, a baker selling a loaf lighter, then it ought to be risked more than just a dissatisfied customer. short loaves were treated with the humiliation of being nailed above the baker's door, like a cast-off sentient warning sign, a laughable yet serious reminder that quality and fairness were paramount. Historians still debate whether such public shaming effectively curbed dishonest practices or just added to the colorful tapestry of local gossip. So as you navigate these echoing alleys amidst medieval chatter, imagine what it might have been like haggling with a baker whose very livelihood hinged on dusty, flour-covered scales, and the appointed ale taster's half-inebriated judgment of integrity. The penalties for deceit, a bread of lesser gravity nailed conspicuously for all to see, appear almost comical now, yet they serve their purpose in upholding one of Europe's first attempts to maintain quality and fairness in markets, long before the age of consumer rights manuals and complaint hotlines. And so, with every step picture this constant dance between baker and buyer, the Assize of bread did more than regulate it, lifted the veil on the intrinsic social contract between maker and consumer, instilling trust. Amidst times where suspicion was sown like the seeds of rye. As you reflect upon this ancient practice, perhaps a corner of your mind nods to a subtle appreciation of how far we've grown, and simultaneously how rootsy traditions continue to impact our modern interpretations of honesty and trade. You feel the warmth of an imagined hearth, cozy and timelessly reassuring, resonating through the stories passed down. Let your thoughts drift into this historical dance of flour and price, a tale as soft and meandering as the river cutting through the town, to be pondered over like a mystery, yet warm as the ovens that baked those ancient loaves of life. Hey guys, tonight we embark on a journey through time, wandering the cobblestone streets of a bustling medieval town, where bread isn't just food, it's the heartbeat of an entire community. Imagine the scent of fresh loaves wafting through narrow alleys, the gentle hum of townsfolk greeting the dawn. Yet amid this serene scene, tension weaves its way through the soft morning light, because a loaf of bread that's too light, it's more than a mere culinary misstep. It could ignite unrest among hungry citizens. You probably won't survive this medieval justice where fairness literally weighs in the balance. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, feel free to post your location and local time in the comments below. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your feet touch the cool ground as you step from the heat of the oven-filled bakery. The town is stirring to life with merchants setting up stalls, the tanneries opening their doors, and the clatter of hooves signaling the arrival of the day's market produce. Your gaze turns to the town officials solemnly parading through the square. Their presence is a weekly ritual, as consistent as the bell that tolls from the church tower. In their hands, they carry something rather peculiar, sets of iron weights, painstakingly maintained and passed down through generations. These weights are no ordinary objects. They hold the authority to determine whether peace will thrive or chaos will ensue. Their purpose to ensure each loaf of bread adheres to the weight decreed by the law. This isn't just about nourishment. It's about fairness and the delicate balance of trust that's essential in a community where survival depends on reliability. You find yourself trailing behind the officials, your curiosity piqued. With each step, you hear hushed conversations and feel a collective anticipation in the air. The market bustles like a living organism, vendors shouting over each other, children darting between stalls, the laughter of those pausing for a moment in their busy routines. And the bakers particularly have their attention focused with rapt concentration on the proceedings. As the weights are set on sturdy wooden tables, there's a hush, as though the entire town holds its breath. Sure enough, beneath the watchful gaze of keen-eyed officials, bakers present their loaves. One by one, each bread is measured against the iron weights. It's a scene both mundane and magical, this weighing of sustenance where law and necessity intertwine with ancient tradition. Historians still debate whether it was the fear of fines or the underlying threat of public shaming that truly motivated compliance. After all, a light loaf could speak volumes, a sign of deceit, of someone carving a little extra profit at the cost of their neighbor's trust. And in a world where alliances and reputations could make or break one's livelihood, trust was as invaluable as gold. Surprisingly, the process itself was more than mere judgment. It was a form of community binding, where the baker offered bread not just for scrutiny, but as a pact of integrity between himself and his patrons. You watch as townsfolk subtly exchange nods of approval or murmurs of satisfaction. The connection between bread and peace becomes evident in this routine of ritualistic observance. As you wander further into the bustling market, snippets of conversation float towards you. You hear tales of legendary loaves, crafted by bakers of ages past with crusts as crisp as the autumn air, and flavors as warm as a hearth. And amid these whispers lies the knowledge of those whose scales tip the wrong way, cautionary tales that served as gentle reminders, an unwelcome prod to ensure balance remains in life and trade. You notice through the storytelling that everyone involved, from baker to customer, the young scribe taking careful notes to the musicians, providing a lively backdrop to the serious business at hand, embraces their role in maintaining the equilibrium of the town. Winding your way further from the square, you pause to marvel at how the simple act of weighing bread threads through time, connecting past and present in this timeless village. It's a dance of civic duty and peaceful vigilance, with each member of the town playing a vital part in holding their community together, loaf by loaf, day by day. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Feel free to share your location and local time in the comments too. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. As you wander past the lively market stalls, your curiosity draws you into the simple but hearty world of medieval bakeries. Here the scene is bustling with sacks of grain awaiting their fate, and ovens glowing warmly like the hearts of hard-working artisans. You can hear the cheerful clinks and clatters of bread being kneaded and shaped by hands seasoned by years of practice. This is a place where tradition, community, and sustenance converge. and where one simple loaf of bread can be an emblem of honest labor and trust. In those times, being a baker was not just about making bread, but about weaving through a complex maze of regulations and expectations. Bread was a staple that could not only mean the difference between a full and empty stomach, but could also reflect the integrity of the entire community. Each loaf carried with it the reputation of its maker. The guilds, those powerful collectives of craftsmen, played a massive role in maintaining quality and fairness. They were the vigilant gatekeepers of their trade, ensuring that all was done with precision and honesty. Yet despite their protective presence, bakeries were places of tension and risk. The weight and measure of each loaf were controlled rigorously, and woe to the baker who dared to shortchange their patrons. Failure to meet these standards could lead to public humiliation, fines, or worse. One historical fact stands out during the reign of King Henry III in the 13th century. Severe penalties were imposed on bakers who were found shortchanging customers. One such penalty included being dragged through the streets on a hurdle, hardly a pleasant experience. It was both a deterrent and a spectacle intended to uphold trust within the community. Historians still debate whether these practices were overly rigorous or simply a necessary measure in times when survival hinged as much on regulation as on recourses like grain. It's in that very atmosphere of tension that the notion of the baker's dozen was born. Imagine you're a baker, making sure each loaf meets the weight requirement under the discerning eye of the guild, and with the looming threat of punishment for any short measure. Giving an extra a 13th loaf became a simple safeguard, a calculated generosity, if you will, intended less as a gift and more as an insurance policy. But here's a surprising twist. Bakers were also known to find creative ways to ensure the honor of their trade without becoming too generous to the point of financial ruin. Rumor has it they would use a clever trick, smaller loaves, for the 13th to balance out their offerings, ensuring they stayed within the good graces of both the law and their patrons. As the evening settles quietly over the market, you notice the down-to-earth hustle of bakers hasn't just been about the careful measure of flour and yeast. It's also about the legacy of trust baked into every risen loaf and the unwritten promise to never demand more for less. The baker's dozen stands as a unique satire, a whimsical way to tiptoe through the stringent requirements of their craft. The practice persisted into modern times, its origins fading somewhat under the gleam of a more romanticized notion of generosity. Yet beneath the thick crust lies an earnest truth that sometimes giving an extra is the safest route, not just to win hearts, but to secure peace and prosperity under the stipulations of the day. As you weave this intricate pattern of bread and cultural tradition into the comfort of your imagination, you realize the tales spun in these humble bakeries are no less meaningful than grand legends of knights and quests you might hear elsewhere. Instead, here in the glow of the bakery's warm hearth, they breathe life into the simple truth of daily existence, the nuances of which shape society's influence history and give rise to practices that sometimes linger like the comforting aroma of a freshly baked loaf, long after their original purpose is forgotten. Caught in the hum of the village square, You find yourself amidst a bustling market, where the scents of fresh produce dance in the air. The sun bathes everything in a warm glow, casting gentle shadows over the cobbled streets. There's chatter everywhere, merchants bartering, children weaving through the crowd, with mischief in their eyes, and the occasional squawk of a chicken attempting its escape. It's just another lively day until quite suddenly a murmur grows into a roar. Your attention shifts to the center of the square where a peculiar procession makes its way. A rickety cage barely holding together is wrought by 4 men carrying it on their shoulders. Inside, looking both sheepish and a little defiant, is a baker. One by one, angry customers start to gather, and soon you're swept along the crowd, curiosity piqued by the unfolding scene. In medieval times, honesty was the bread and butter of life, especially for those trading in daily essentials like cloth meat and yes bread. Cheats were not taken lightly, especially when it concerned the staff of life. Today's spectacle is no exception. This baker accused of selling underweight loaves by using less flour and more air has been caught in the act. Historians are unsure whether this was a common punishment or just a particularly vivid example. But these public shamings were meant to send a message as clear as a church bell ringing in the morning. Woven baskets brimming with stale bread begin to circulate through the crowd. What began as whispers of frustration now crescendos into palpable anger. The first crusty loaf arcs through the air, hitting the cage's bars with a dull thud before bouncing harmlessly to the ground. You can't help but marvel at how the acts of anger manifest in such oddly mundane ways. The very loaves this baker was meant to provide, now turned into weapons. As more loaves are launched, the clamor grows, underscoring the deep-seated value placed on fairness. In these times, a loaf of bread was more than a meal. It was sustenance crucial to survival. And when someone tampered with that, it was as if they'd struck at the very heart of the community. Yet even amidst the chaos, there's a tinge of the absurdity of the scene that isn't lost on you. The baker, his dignity piecemealed by stale crumbs, tries to shield himself with his arms while maintaining a semblance of composure. It's a balancing act, teetering on the line between farce and ruthlessness, showcasing another layer of the spectrum of human justice. You find yourself thinking about the consequences of his actions. Historians still debate whether this type of punishment truly reformed the accused, or merely provided a fleeting catharsis for the townspeople. Some argue these public humiliations fostered a sense of community control over unethical practices, while others see them as harsh spectacles that did little to address underlying issues. Just as the pelting seems to reach its peak, the cries begin to subside, the fervent anger giving way to a sort of weary acquiescence. Perhaps the crowd realizes they've said their piece, or maybe arms are simply tired from hurling yesterday's dinner. Gradually, townsfolk disperse, returning to the ordinary, albeit refreshed or spent from their extraordinary episode of street justice. With the day's verdict rendered in doughy debris, you wander back into the throng of market stalls, the late afternoon sun beginning to dip in the sky. The rhythm of life resumes its gentle sway, colorful chatter and song filling the gaps once amplified by outrage. It's interesting you muse how the past still shapes our understanding of fairness and the measures of justice, however flawed they might seem through modern eyes. And as you weave through bouquets of lavender and baskets of vibrant fruit, you can't help but feel a twinge of curiosity as to which tales will endure into the future, just as this one has found its way to you tonight. You walk the cobblestone streets. The chilled evening air fills your lungs, mixing with the scent of freshly baked bread wafting from nearby bakeries. Imagine a world where bread, the simplest of comforts, harbors untold secrets. Not many years ago, the bakers of medieval towns and bustling city markets were both necessary and notorious. Yes, bread was essential, the comfort food of every era, but not all bakers played fair. As you meander deeper into the twists and turns of history, your mind drifts to the tales spun about those who baked, with a wink and a nudge slipping into their doughs, the unmentionable chalk ground bone and heaven knows what else. You feel a shiver, not from the cold, but from the revelation. Imagine buying a loaf only to find it baked with trickery, a concoction more of deception than of flour. While dishonest bakers ensured every bite was as much a gamble as it was sustenance, you smile, thinking of how some guarded their recipes with such fervor it bordered on an obsession. These recipes were like treasure maps. They held the promise of prosperity, but were fiercely protected, hidden from prying eyes by those who deemed them worthy of the most solemn secrecy pacts. It didn't matter whether the ingredients were legal. Those were mere footnotes in the grander tale of culinary craftiness. Historians still debate whether these secretive recipes were more myth than reality, yet the stories that linger are captivating. Some whisper of bakers who, far from today's sanitation standards, would concoct special blends and even employ symbolic ingredients thought to bring good fortune. These legends include all sorts of superstitions promising luck or delight to those daring enough to taste the result. You thread your way through the crowded marketplace in your mind, where bakers vie for your attention, with cries promising the best loaf, whispering assurances of their purity. In a world where reputations could rise and fall with the turning of a dough hook, it was essential for honorable bakers to distinguish themselves from their less principled peers. Yet as fires crackle in brick ovens and shadows dance on the bakery walls, even the most diligent could be tempted by shortcuts glittering with deceit. Beyond the mesmerizing glow, the allure of shortcuts made its way into recipes that were never written, just passed from master to apprentice. The promise of more yield from less raw material proved too tempting for some. You can almost see the conspiratorial nods exchanged over kneading tables, hands deftly moving, concealing the telltale evidence of cunning additives before they became part of the very fabric of some bakery's infamy. Yet not all was shrouded in darkness. There were those who devoted themselves to their craft with admirable fidelity. Imagine strong, calloused hands, blending flour water and yeast with earnest precision, anticipating the simple satisfaction of a well-baked loaf, minus the theatrical trickery. The warmth radiating from their ovens was a testament to their devotion, a pledge of their honest labor and pride, contrasting sharply with the clandestine mixers of fraudulent dough. And as the twilight of history stretched before you, one thing was clear. While dishonest bakers and secret recipes spiced up the chronicles of the past, our collective trust in that golden-crusted staple remained steadfast. Bread in all its forms and flavors has forever been a bridge connecting people, transcending mere survival, lingering instead in the realm of tradition and memory. Amidst this historical tapestry, full of marks where legend intertwines with fact, one can't help but appreciate the simplicity and complexity that coexist within something so humble yet essential. Just as the dough rises and takes form, so too does the narrative of the bakers who, honest or otherwise, shaped the journey from grain to loaf. The world flickers like a candle in a gentle breeze, and you find yourself strolling through the cobblestone streets of a medieval village. Soft shadows stretch under the warm glow of torchlight as you make your way to the cracked wooden table at the edge of a bustling marketplace. The air is thick with the aroma of freshly baked bread, a scent that wraps around you like a comforting old quilt. It's almost like you can hear the whispers of history on the wind, hinting at stories of lives once lived. As you settle closer to the scene, you spot the local baker, tossing loaves of bread with a practiced hand. The rich amber tone of wheat bread sets them apart, destined for the privileged whose pockets are lined with coin. It's a striking contrast, really. In this era, having wheat bread at your table is akin to holding the stars in your hands. You might not survive this medieval market society with its unpredictable courses, much less the weather. But worry not. We're merely passing by tonight. The common folk, they say, make do with rye and barley, their loaves denser and darker, a reflection of the soil from which they came. Historians agree that at least for the average peasant, a simple loaf was more than just nourishment. It was a lifeline, tethered to the reliable cycles of the seasons. Occasionally, you might even find bread made from oats or acorn flour, although these would dare you to call them bread with a straight face. In these times, bread is more than just the staple of life. It is an emblem of one's place in the world. A loaf of bread can tell you a story 1,000 words could never quite capture. It hints at power and privilege struggle, and survival existing at the heart of home and hearth. It would be remiss to overlook the fact that bread doesn't just feed, it differentiates. It defines the boundary between those who have and those who have little. Now imagine the bitter chill of a lean winter when even today's luxuries are but wistful hopes wrapped in yesterday's promises. You can almost see the lines, the weary faces mold into a tapestry of desperation, threaded with expectation and longing for the scent of fresh bread that cuts through the cold. Even noblemen once perched high atop their towers of superiority find themselves humbly queuing for the coarser loaves. During these relentless winters, the shortages test the resolve of both rich and poor alike. It's a society-wide leveling of sorts, where the luxurious apricot glaze adorning wheat bread might just be a figment of one's imagination, captured in the syrupy relief of stories shared over a crackling fire. Spices and herbs become scarce echoes of distant lands, lost until the next bountiful harvest. This blending of classes, particularly during harsh winters, is where history takes on a more mysterious tone. Some say this mingling birthed camaraderie, while others argue it deepened divides, instantly refortified in spring's arrival. Perhaps they were united only by hunger, and once it was sated, retreated to their roles as defined by the social structure. Historians still debate whether these shared burdens forged lasting connections across class lines, or simply amplified existing disparities once the snows thawed. Back in the present, as you wander through this narrative landscape, the peacefulness envelops you like the softest down blanket. Let the story guide you on a journey where time itself gets a little softer, the sharp edges of the world blurring slightly, like footprints fading on the sandy shore. It's a dance between fact and fable, and as you close your eyes, take solace in the gentle rhythm of past lives echoing through the ages. You find yourself in a dimly lit bakery where the sweet and earthy aroma of freshly baked bread fills the air. It's late in the evening, and the baker has just taken the final loaves out of the brick oven, their golden crusts glistening under the soft light of flickering candles. There is something sacred about this place, a feeling that lingers in the air, like the wisps of flour meticulously floating around. As you stand there, you are aware that bread you know isn't just about the enticing flavor or the warm satisfaction it brings. You're about to discover its deeper significance, especially within the tapestry of history, where bread was more than sustenance. It was a divine symbol. Long ago in medieval Europe, baking bread was not merely a household task. It was a craft revered and wrapped in ritual. Bread symbolized the body of Christ during Holy Communion, quite an important role for something made of mere flour, water, and yeast. For a baker, this meant their role carried a heavy burden of responsibility, almost celestial. Baking bread was practically an art form. Any bread that turned out poorly shaped or unappealing wasn't just embarrassing, it bordered on heresy. Imagine the pressure of knowing that your attempt at baking could be seen as an affront to the divine. And here we get to the crux of the story. Poorly baked bread could be met with accusations of blasphemy, a charge as serious as it sounds. Understandably, this could become quite the ordeal if the bread came out less than perfect. As a baker, you'd have to ensure your dough was kneaded just right, with the same precision as conducting an orchestra, to avoid being labeled a blasphemer. A chewy crumb or an overly dark crust could potentially lead you to face the wrath of local religious scrutiny. Definitely not something you'd want to toast your breakfast to. Historians still debate whether such harsh penalties were consistently enforced, or simply a tale to scare apprentice bakers into immaculate loaves. Yet amid these stringent expectations, one must wonder about the unexpected surprises that may have occurred in those bustling kitchens. Maybe the occasional mischievous mouse nibbling at the flour sack contributed to a day's failed excellence, leaving the poor baker to desperately make excuses that involved less divine intervention and more rodent mischief. You can almost hear the whispers of the seasoned ghostly bakers exchanging tales of bread mishaps that dance too closely with heresy. Yet that only scratches the surface of this ancient relationship between bread faith and the hands that shaped it. The stories of bakers' brushes with superstition lend an element of mystery and humor to a history otherwise focused so earnestly on reverence. Standing amidst these stories, you begin to understand the significance of these seemingly simple actions. Each part of the process, from mixing to proofing and baking, took on a sacred rhythm, a dance that connected earth and spirit. It's a humbling reminder that behind every loaf, there was devotion sworn as unwavering as the ancient walls of the cathedrals they baked for. As the night grows deeper and the lingering warmth of the oven begins to wane, you step away from the bakery, leaving behind the softly glowing embers of stories past. You reconnect with the modern world, where thankfully no one's faith rides on the crust's perfect split or Crumb's divine texture. But the magic of what you've learned, that sacred tie between bread, history, and belief, stays with you like a gentle lullaby. In the quiet of your thoughts, this tale of bread's significance whispers you to rest. How fortunate it is that in today's world, the bread in your kitchen is blessedly low stakes, allowing you to appreciate its nostalgia without concern of heretical repercussions. As you drift toward slumber, think about the ancient bakers mixing dough by their flickering hearths, aware that their every action bore the weight of sacred tradition. And now, enveloped in the gentle embrace of night, you welcome the dreams to carry these stories forward, resting in the safety of your own soft bed. So let the music of history's gentle rustling guide you into sleep's embrace, where the story of bread and belief merges effortlessly with your own dreams. As you step into the gentle, timeless world of the monastery, the air is warm, with the scent of flower and a hint of something you can't quite place. You find yourself on soft stone floors, echoing the soft shawl of silence that wraps around the monks as they begin their day. Barely a whisper escapes as the ritual unfolds, an ancient soothing dance between hands and dough. The act of baking here is more than just a craft. It is a divine ceremony, a sacred offering of humility and grace handed down through centuries. In this hushed sanctuary, solennel is not merely a lack of sound, but a vessel of communication, a channel through which spirituality breathes. Each monk stands at a wooden table, a dusting of flour on thick robes. Their hands move in deliberate rhythmic motions, careful as they knead the dough, turning and pressing, folding and shaping with devotion. It's as if each fold is a silent prayer, each stretch a meditative breath. Monks believed that bread was the embodiment of life's simplicity, their quiet devotion a mirror of their faith. You trace the elegant motions of Brother Thomas, who once confided in an ancient, well-worn script that the soul of bread lives in the hands that knead it. And you remember that monastic breads were renowned not just for their taste, but for their spirit and life, often believed to carry healing properties. It's whispered among the lay people that once a monk imbues the bread with his prayers, it becomes more than food. It transforms into a physical embodiment of their spiritual journey. Silence buzzes softly around you, a comfort as you behold the dough bestowed with subtle yet potent blessings. It's in this involuntary pause that your mind conjures the thought, you probably won't survive this if it turns into talking too loudly here. Such is the magnitude of peace. A quiet joke to yourself in the tranquility that surrounds you. As the dough rises, the air fills with expectation. The simplicity of the act, the yeast fermenting the flour, stretching weaves, time itself into something chewy and warm. Historians note that baking for these holy men was more than sustenance. It was a metaphor for spiritual ascent. Some argue about how the yeast represents the soul's rise, while others debate whether this symbolic play was an intentional monkish metaphor or merely a fortunate connection. The time-honored silence is broken only by the soft rustle of robes and the gentle crackling of the risen dough being tended to with care. You watch as Brother Thomas places it in the ancient stone oven, where the bread will bake slowly, steeping in that tangible monastery warmth. Watching the bread bake stories of how monks shared their finished loaves with the surrounding poor, often foregoing their own portions, springs to mind. The act of sharing was essential, you know. It wasn't just about feeding the hungry, but also about nourishing the soul. Historians agree that these acts of giving forged ties of kinship that strengthened the community's spirit against the wavering times. As the bread emerges, its crust golden and glowing, the warmth of the oven tangible in the air. It's hard not to find unusual beauty in the simplicity, the divine significance of a mere loaf here. Baking is a silent testament to faith, an act that fills both stomach and spirit, drawing every soul closer to harmony. A cool breeze wafts in through an open candle-lit corridor, inviting you to recall the endless cycle of dawns and dusks these stones have seen. The bread, still steaming and aromatic, is laid with care on ancient oak tables, prepared for the next sacred step, the sharing. When the time comes for the loaf to be divided, you're reminded that each slice is given thoughtfully with brotherly love, fulfilling both a spiritual and physical appetite. The monks share these moments, heads bowed in quiet contemplation, a prayer for each bite. It's a scene of humble gratitude, part of a tradition where food nourishes not just the body, but the very essence of human connection. You witness these repeated acts, small yet significant through unmatched tranquility. Each monk cherishes the bread in silence, a wordless ode to the divine work of their hands. It's said that those who partake devour not merely sustenance, but a divinely guided intention. And as you drift in this serene world, your mind softens, lulled by the quiet routine, the gentle rhythmic intonation of lives lived in dedication. Bread so steeped in the essence of time becomes a lullaby of its own, a soft, tangible presence from the beginning of the day to its end, a serene end to the rhythmic cadence sung by hands devoted to silent worship. As the night deepens and the light softens, you settle into the comforting sound of monks returning to their quarters, the soft rustle of robes in the dim light. It's a gentle chorus of good nights in the air, a final whisper of peace steeped in history's embrace, a reverence for this moment where the past and the present converge in dough and flour, in silence and prayer. In this gathered sense of finality, you breathe deeper, as if to capture one last fragrant echo of this calm. The air is a tapestry woven in silence, an aroma wrapping you in the realization that simplicity begets beauty. It's no longer a mere monastery, but a place where time caresses each moment, where every rise of dough is a reminder of life's gentle, cyclical grace. You feel the story fade, but it lingers in the mind like a lullaby softly sung. The narrative gently eases into rest, much like the monks themselves, retreating to their nightly repose. And as your eyes grow heavy, the calm continues, inviting a restful ease, as if you too were a part of this enduring tale. Slowly, you drift off, carried away on the whispered promise of dreams, brewed in harmony with the tender satisfaction of a story ending just as peacefully as it began. As you wander through the bustling market, your senses are overwhelmed by the lively cacophony of traders peddling their goods, the tantalizing aroma of fresh produce, spices, and baked goods wafting through the air. Your gaze is drawn to a group of bread stalls, each displaying an array of loaves, from crusty baguettes to soft rolls. Among the busy hustle, you notice a small gathering of curious onlookers forming around a particular booth. Intrigued, you meander over, slipping between a woman with a basket of apples and a man inspecting a carrot. There, at the heart of the growing crowd, is someone who stands out, a bread inspector, clad in a uniform that commands respect and attention. This figure carries with them a polished loaf of bread, its crust shimmering under the gentle caress of the morning light. This loaf is known as the standard loaf, a perfectly baked benchmark against which all other bread in the market will be judged. Bread inspection day, you think with a mix of excitement and apprehension. The tradition is an ancient one, its origins lost to time, but its impact clearly felt by all. Bread, a staple of life, a symbol of sustenance and community. The weight of this cultural icon presses down heavily on the shoulders of the bakers, who watch nervously as the inspector approaches their stalls. The inspector approaches Mr. Whitby's stall, first an elderly baker known for his crusty sourdoughs. He leans forward, his hands trembling slightly as the inspector lifts one of his loaves, comparing it diligently to the standard. You watch, heart in your throat, as the inspector turns the loaf over in their hands, tapping gently to test its firmness, sniffing to assess its aroma. A murmur flutters through the crowd as the inspector passes judgment with a slight nod. Relief washes over Mr. Whitby's face, a collective exhale of sympathy shared amongst the other stall holders. You drift on the scene, replaying in your mind, noting the palpable tension that coils through the air. It's more than just bread. It's the reputation of the baker, the pride of their trade, the likeness satisfied customers see in their daily purchases. The inspector continues down the line, the crowd scattering and reforming at each stall. The bread inspectors were established many moons ago, historically viewed as figures of impartial authority and expertise, a necessary fixture in markets like these since medieval times. Historians still debate whether these inspectors were first established at the behest of the local lords desiring quality control over their own supplies, or if they originally emerged from community demand. The rustle of bread wrappers and the crunch of fresh crusts, being compared to the polished gleaming standard, is a strangely satisfying sound. Yet this process also underscores a stark reality. If a baker's loaf fails to meet the standard, the embarrassment is public, their failure undeniable. The supportive camaraderie of the market makes the trial no less daunting, suffused with a gentle kind of sarcasm only those who bake under such scrutiny would understand. Eventually, the inspector reaches the stall of Agnes, a vibrant young woman whose creative twists on traditional recipes have earned her a loyal following. Today, she presents a walnut loaf, its rich scent mingling with a hint of cinnamon. You watch her intently, remembering how she once confided that such inspections felt akin to sitting an exam, nerve-wracking yet exhilarating. The inspector meticulously runs a hand over the loaf, peering at the crumb with a critical eye, and probing its density with a gentle squeeze. Each movement is deliberate, each second passing like an eternity. And then, just as the tension seems unendurable, the inspector breaks into a rare smile, nodding with approval. Agnes's face lights up with joy as the crowd erupts into soft applause her success. A small victory not just for her, but for all who adorn these market lanes. Her walnut and cinnamon loaf has stood the test, joining the ranks of bread that do honor to the craft. As you wander the market, the mingling of stories' aromas and the whispers of bread's history accompany you. The bread inspectors continue their rounds, small moments of triumph or setback playing out across the market stalls. You watch the inspector pivot toward the next baker, drifting away as you absorb the sights and sounds around you. The invisible thread of tradition weaves through every loaf, binding past to present as the market bustles on. When bakers overcharged or shorted weight, that's when the trouble really started. In the dim glow of early dawn, you find yourself in the bustling heart of a medieval town where the smell of freshly baking bread wafts through the cobblestone streets. It's the bakery you've known all your life, the centerpiece of a town where loaves can mean survival. Yet there's a tension in the air today, a whisper among the villagers saying something isn't right. Imagine you are standing shoulder to shoulder with townsfolk as the news spreads like wildfire. The baker has been accused of baking loaves lighter than promised, cheating the scales themselves for profit. It was a time when bread meant life, you see, and fairness wasn't just hoped for, it was demanded. When the bread was light, it wasn't just a harmless mistake. It was a threat to survival. History remembered moments like these, where scales defied honesty, and the people's patience was pushed to the brink. You can almost feel the unrest simmering, hear the murmur of discontent growing louder. The markets echo with voices, the kind filled with righteous anger. Those loaf-sized shortfalls tasted bitter when the hunger pangs settled in at dusk. You glance towards the shop, spotting a group beginning to gather, and there's a noticeable lack of patience etched on their faces. Historians still debate whether such incidents were mere happenstance or intention. But one thing is clear. In those days, stones weren't just part of the street. They could tap their way into fists, thrown in fury clattering against broken glass with the force of 1,000 grievances. It often didn't take more than a spark to fuel that kind of rally, a rally of hands demanding fairness, hands that once held tools, but might in a flash of fury opt for stones in their stead. The stories passed down from your grandparents speak of how the baker, possibly realizing the folly or perhaps in a state of panic, often had no choice but to face the crowd. The window broke with a sound that carried across the town. Some old-timers would whisper in huddled circles by winter fires, reflections of that chaos dancing in their eyes. You can picture the scene clearly now, the crack of shattering glass, the grimace of the baker, the rallying cries growing louder instead of softer. It wasn't uncommon for slaves of hunger and opponents of betrayal to gather in such fury that windows could shatter like the threads of trust that bound the town together. Tools of the trade became weapons of justice, albeit one that reflected an order, a lot less actual judicial procedure than might have been desired by peace-loving souls like yourself. There's something almost primal about the act of bread making, the way it ties communities' threads together, peace in the crusts, and locates power in the loaves. And just as easily it could weave discord. It's here amongst the commotion that unexpected detail glows like hearthside embers. Sometimes it wasn't just broken windows that marked the end of a day's tumultuous transactions, but treaties as well. Hastily forged promises between the baker and the people, often eroded as soon as the next oven's batch was due. Gazing at the baker's face, you ponder, will tales of this day endure in whispers, generations from now among other firesides. Yet your watching eyes soon witness something more tender. The arrival of townsfolk who, despite the fear and anger, step forward to mend what was undone. Mending trust, mending windows, mending bridges between neighbors. They reflect humanity's age-old struggle, the yearning for fairness, and the crave for bread tied together through time's tapestry. Such was life when bread meant more than it weighed. Tonight, resting under a soft blanket, your bag is beside you, filled with the sounds of distant pasts. Allow the memories to envelop you like the warmth from a fire-lit hearth. But all this comes with a reminder which echoes through history. Louder than the falling stone's balance is fragile fairness, as rare as flour in tough times. And as you close your eyes, let the embrace of sleep blur into dreams where scales hold true, and bread awaits whole and hearty, just as it should be against every tomorrow's dawn. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from your cozy spot around the world, drop your location and local time in the comments below. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. As you join the bustling crowd, you're swept into a world where coins jingle clamorously in pockets. But in some corners, the jingling of coin is replaced by the heft of a bread loaf. Imagine looking over at a town merchant negotiating rations, his hand not holding gold, but a precisely weighed loaf of bread. Just like you might count your change today, they would weigh these loaves on a balanced scale, assessing their worth in flour and patience. Back in medieval Europe, bread filled more than just bellies. It balanced the scales of trade and agreement. Historians agree bread was counted almost like you would stacks of coins today, but some still debate whether this practice emerged purely out of necessity or cunning opportunism. The brown rustic loaves were swaddled in cloths, like little treasures that baked into society itself. As you wander these past avenues, you're immersed deeper into a past life. You find yourself entering a tiny shop, the air fragrant with flour dust and yeast. Inside, a miller is laboriously crafting dough to mold another batch of these precious bread coins. The miller's hands move skillfully as if painting history with each stroke of kneading. He pauses, looking up with a twinkle in his eye, and tells you an unusual tale. Did you know, he begins in a hushed tone, bread was not just food. It once paid for peace and safety as taxes, if you will. In some places, landlords accepted loaves to keep the peace and maintain order. He leans forward, flour dusting his sleeves like a magician's drape. Imagine paying your dues, not in gold, but bread. It was our way to keep the tally and remind folks who held the upper crust. It's an astonishing thought, isn't it? Bread, the simple marriage of flour and water, dictating the rhythms of life from daily meals to duties owed. But with bread time would also find its way into wages. Imagine fields stretching wide, workers toiling under the sky and being paid with bread pressed firmly into their hands. Some scholars scoff at the notion, pondering if this form of payment could truly bind contracts and commitments. You continue down this path of history, where textures of bread hold secrets too. Loaves weren't just nourishments, their shapes spoke volumes. Circles echoed unity, squares spoke community. The architecture of each loaf laden with intention, like folds of a map. Yet how these meanings molded and shifted still elude some among the scholarly circles, lost in the folds of time, like the whispers of wooden ovens. But there, not far from where you stand, a baker emerges, his hands dusted with remnants of the morning's dough. He smiles warmly, offering you a small loaf. As you cradle it in your hand, you realize you're holding not just food, but a slice of a bygone society, a village's heartbeat wrapped in crust. Wandering into night with a refusal to let go of this enchanted bread currency world, the thought of what these loaves witness lingers in your mind. Their part in rent payments, sweating fields, and stories beneath skies, a weight not measured by numbers, rather a barter of trust and survival. And just as dusk settles, a calming breeze rises, like the whisper of an old tale, comforting you with the timeless truth that even simplest things can shape history's sublime. In the dim glow of early morning, the village stretches across the horizon, shrouded in a gentle mist that clings to the fields. You wake to the earthy aroma of rye bread baking in someone's oven, but there's a strangeness that lingers in the air, almost palpable. As you step outside, the chill of dew-wet grass greets your bare feet. Each step into the village feels as if you're pulling a thread, unraveling an ancient mystery woven tightly into the fabric of everyday life here. You find a familiar path under your feet, a well-trodden route leading you through fields golden with rye that sway with a hypnotic rhythm. It seems peaceful, and yet beneath the surface something peculiar stirs. This rye, the very life-giving crop, holds a secret darker than you could have imagined. Ergot, a fungus with the power to turn bread into something else entirely, something dangerous. It's early autumn, and the harvest is nearly complete. As farmers gather the last sheaves, you notice a gnarled old woman standing at the edge of the field, her eyes narrowed lips, moving in what seems like a silent incantation. Perhaps she's one of those folk healers, or perhaps someone on the outskirts of acceptance, someone people whisper about after dark. It's not that anyone ever proved she practiced anything peculiar, but stories cling to her like ivy to a crumbling wall. Historians still debate whether masses of people truly gathered to hear her prophecies, or if her presence was merely a thing of tales exaggerated, as mouths passed stories like heirlooms. Yet in this world, where ergot fungi flourishes, unseen, those whispers have a way of weaving themselves into reality as seamlessly as dreams turn into nightmares. Children, you see, are drawn to her like leaves to the wind. They follow her begging for tales and charms that bind the light of fireflies, just as they love the eerie thrill of what she might whisper. And then there's you, slightly out of place in this moment, but curious all the same. You notice the children's laughter is a little too high-pitched, their eyes a tad too wide, perhaps, from the ergot laced in the morning's bread. It's easy to dismiss the tales at first. Convulsions could just as well be attributed to fevers, and hallucinations to the imaginative tales spun by the eldest villager in the dim-lit evenings. But when these things begin to happen to Aunt Beatrice or Old Man John from down the road, gravity shifts within your gut. Something is wrong. On a day just like any other, the air heavy with coming rain, you find a scene etched into memory. A gathering in the town square filled with anxious murmurs. An elder speaks gravely of divine punishment and ominous omens, as though in those opaque clouds overhead, God himself had written curses meant for the ground below. Yet more whisper of the work of witches' invisible threads, spun into the wry old magic, lingering in what should be wholesome. One memorable fact stands clear in your mind during this period. Something known as St. Anthony's fire gripped whole communities, burning through them, not with flame, but with sickness, marking humanity's fragile dance with the unseen natural world. Indeed, there was a time when a village not so unlike this one would find itself seized with panic, its townsfolk envisioning sins, manifesting through angry winds and errant crops. As the sky darkens and the evening falls, you walk through these cobbled streets, layered in soft whispers of leaves. Someone lights a lantern at the edge of town, its flicker casting long shadows that dance like ghosts. You think of the rye field, peaceful and foreboding, a siren hidden in plain sight. Yet within this darkness, glimmers of hope. Persist herbs might yet be found to fend off this chilling grasp, and communal prayers echo resiliently against nature's lurking menace. You resolve to take a stroll before night fully descends, to clear your mind of mysteries and omens and fantastical things better suited for tales than reality. It's in these small moments that the world rights itself again, steadying you with acceptance and the calm certainty that humans have ever faced forces beyond their control. Stars emerge shyly, one by one, against the heavens. As you return to your room, the haunting echoes of light, decay, and warmth bid you to rest, to ponder dreams and realities, and wake up to find the dawn, yet again soft in its promise, unchanged and unchanging. The night wraps itself around you like a comforting cloak, tucking you into the embrace of sleep. As these tales linger in the air, you breathe deeply, breathing in not just the history, but the quiet reassurance that this night tucked warmly into your own bed, you are safe, and that the coming day holds the prospect of both new riddles and new clarity. You find yourself in the bustling heart of a medieval town, the sun just beginning to peek over the horizon. The gentle aroma of freshly baked bread wafts through the air, reaching you like a comforting embrace. It's a long-established scene in this world of cobblestone streets and thatched roofs, where bread is more than sustenance. It's a daily ritual, a craft honed by the hands of skilled bakers. The townsfolk know well of these practitioners, and many are surprised to learn that among the most diligent bakers are the women wives, widows, and daughters who take up this ancient profession with grace and tenacity. Each morning you can almost see them as they arrange the wood and tend to the crackling fires in their ovens. It's not merely a matter of placing dough inside and waiting. No, it's a dance with time and temperature, a delicate balance that requires a watchful eye and practiced hands. These women work with a hushed intensity, their experience evident in the simple, precise movements, each loaf a testimony to their expertise. Some historians remain puzzled about how such a stark gender presence emerged. One theory suggests that as men took up new trades and services in the burgeoning urban environments, women naturally stepped into the roles most closely aligned with home and hearth. Whatever the cause, their role was crucial to the community's daily life, standing shoulder to shoulder with their male counterparts, often carrying bread on their head in baskets through the winding streets, the woven vessels swaying with each step. However, the life of a baker wasn't without its challenges. The local bread police officials tasked with ensuring the quality and weight of bread loomed large in the daily operations of these bakers. You might chuckle at the thought of officials so dedicated to their work that they would even stop women in their tracks for a bread inspection. Yet this was serious business. Selling underweight bread was an offense that could lead to fines or even bodily punishment. Picture, if you will, a woman standing proudly by her stall, the morning's labor displayed in neat rows. Her eyes are vigilant, well aware of the bread police who wander the market square. She greets each customer with a nod, swiftly wrapping their choice in cloth. Occasionally, there's a nod of respect from the officers, a recognition of her skills. Still, every transaction carries the tension of what otherwise feels like a gentle, quaint scene. Despite these pressures, or perhaps because of them, many bakers found small ways to defy the norms. For example, the tale goes of a baker's daughter who once managed to outwit the officers by integrating flax seeds into her bread mix, effectively disguising the weight discrepancy. But even this small act of rebellion was known, for tales among bakers traveled faster than any service pigeon. The mix of practical skill and daring wit made these bakers formidable figures in an age premised on stringent rule-following. Yet for all the tales of avoidance and audacious escapes, much of their reputation relied on consistency and mastery. Bread, you see, had a life of its own. It was said that the simplest ingredients, flour, water, yeast, and salt, could be shaped into 100 variations through the baker's intuition and experience. Imagine the quiet moments before dawn, whereby a flickering candle, dough was kneaded rhythmically on a worn wood table. The room occasionally filled with hushed whispers or laughter, as sisters, mothers, and daughters worked side by side, recounting tales from the week, a broken comb, a missed stitch in a tapestry, or the antics of a neighborhood goat. Histories still debate whether these moments bound communities tighter than any guild or church decree. From such networks, recipes and techniques flowed effortlessly between families and generations, a gentle current of knowledge. The bakers here formed an intricate web of support, their camaraderie as essential as the flour itself. They were vigilant watchers of each other's stalls. When illness left one bedridden, equally fierce defenders, if price fixing was rumored among merchants. Within the warmth of this everyday world, you can sense resilience. Perhaps it draws from the very nature of bread, which begins as formless dough slowly nurtured into sustenance through fire. These women faced the warmth required of a community with an undeniable practicality and the love embedded within the structure of their craft. Each loaf carried their silent promise of nourishment, each slice an extension of that community bond. And so your mind wanders through these scenes, the richness of this unseen history, evolving with each anecdote, rising as gently as the dough beneath the hand of a skilled baker. Surely the world through their eyes was not just shaped by oven and fire, but by the nuanced dance between obligation and passion, a hidden strength that warmed the very heart of this quaint, charming town. The warm sun rises gently over your village, casting a golden glow that washes over the cobblestone streets. The day begins with a familiar bustle, and as you emerge from your home, the smell of freshly baked bread wafts through the air. Today, you set off towards the communal bakehouse basket, in hand filled with your carefully prepared dough. You wind through narrow lanes, each turn bringing you closer to that well-trodden path leading to the heart of village life. The bakehouse stands as a testament to community and cooperation, a place where people come together, not just to bake, but to connect. Out here, amidst the buzz of chatter and the rhythmic clatter of wooden tools, you realize that not everyone has the luxury of an oven at home. A strange thought for our modern times, but commonplace back then, as large communal ovens were shared resources vital to daily life. With each step you recall a family story, whispered to you over countless evenings. Your great-grandfather, the local miller, had once traded flour, not for coin, but for stories. In those tales, he depicted bakehouses not only as warm havens, but stages of subtle drama, where news traveled faster than the speed of a rider on horseback. Arriving at the bakehouse, you're greeted by a vibrant tapestry of sounds and scents, the walls marked by soot and time echo, with the voices of neighbors negotiating their turn at the fire. The central hearth is a flurry of activity, its flames a beacon in the morning light. You've heard that these bakehouses were the heartbeat of the community, a notion historians debate over whether it was the bread or the stories that nourished more souls. You join the lively queue, settling into a spot that offers a clear view of the happenings within. The baker, with his flour-dusted hands and ever-present smile, is as much a fixture here as the ancient hearth. It's amazing to think how such places might have been the birthplace of friendly rivalries, originating from the quest for the perfect crust, whether to impress a neighbor or to win the affections of a sweetheart. As you wait, time shifts effortlessly, and you find yourself engaged in light-hearted banter with fellow villagers. An older woman regales you with tales of her mother, whose bread was rumored to be so light it could float. This begs the age-old question: was her secret really just the quality of wheat? Or perhaps the water sourced from the old wishing well? A clang disrupts your reverie, signaling an opening near the coveted spot closest to the heat. The fires beckon, and as you move closer, you sense a quiet excitement ripple through the line. This is your chance, and you feel the flicker of competition, knowing that this isn't merely about sustenance. It's a matter of personal pride. Ciara, a neighbor, is next to you, whispering age-old techniques passed down through generations. Add a leaf beneath your loaf, she quips, as if sharing a secret known only to a select few. Whether or not this technique truly affects the flavor or texture, many historians still ponder. But it's these little idiosyncrasies that make such gatherings quintessentially human. The stories around the hearth are as comforting as the bread itself. There's a peculiar joy in learning who's traveled, who's returned, whose cow escaped the pen yet again, and of course, whose bread had the finest, crispest crust. A splash of jocular rivalry adds spice to the mix, just like the pinch of salt you added to your dough, infusing the event with light-hearted competition. As the sun climbs higher, you turn your attention to the outright artistry unfolding before you. The transformation of raw dough into golden loaves is a marvel and alchemy of sorts, one that speaks to the skill and patience of every individual here. You notice a young boy, wide-eyed with wonder, witnessing this process for the first time. His awe a reflection of an innocence you recognize might just plant the seed for another generation steeped in these traditions. With a practiced ease, you slide your loaf into the heat, making sure it's positioned just right. The door closes, sealing in potential, and promise both culinary and social. As you step back, the warmth of the flames wraps around you, and for a moment you're lost in thought, imagining future bake days, each bringing new stories, new friends. Outside the bakehouse, the world seems to slow. The distant calling of merchants setting up their stalls, the occasional neighing of horses, these sounds form a backdrop, as comforting as the aroma of fresh bread permeating the air. There's a timelessness here, a seamless weaving of life that feels as eternal as the very ground beneath your feet. With each hour, your loaf transforms, rising steadily. In this moment, you're struck by a singular thought. Simple acts like these old, as history itself, bind communities, strengthen them, and turn the ordinary into something exceptional. This sense of continuity, this shared experience, knits its way through time, just as vital today as it was then. Finally, your bread is ready. The baker, a figure of warmth and geniality, hands it to you with a nod, signaling both satisfaction in the shared accomplishment and the unspoken promise of stories yet to unfold. You cradle the loaf, feeling its warmth seep into your skin. This is not just bread. It's your contribution to the grand tapestry of life in the village, a proof of connection, continuity, and community. The walk home is peaceful. The basket on your arm is lighter now, yet it holds something so much richer, your history alive and carried forward. Tomorrow you'll return, drawn back by the magnetism of the bakehouse, fueled by the prospect of more tales, more laughter, and perhaps another crack at that perfect crust. But for now, the day succumbs to twilight, and with it, you too find a pleasant repose, woven into the rhythmic cadence of the village that lulls you towards rest. Gold. The gleaming metal in your hand feels heavier than it appears, imbued with the stories of countless generations. This simple, yet profound starter has played a pivotal role throughout history, nearly as essential as the air you breathe or the grain you eat. It's been a quiet, steadfast companion to humanity, keeping communities alive through the trials of war and the harsh bleakness of famine. In its sparkling surface, you can almost see the faces of those who have relied on its worth, who have marveled at its luster and bartered it for survival. You're about to embark on a mesmerizing dream through time to explore how gold has danced gracefully through the millennia, flickering brilliantly against the backdrop of history's darkest nights and brightest days. Imagine for a moment its journey beginning in ancient times. You are a trader along the Silk Road, your wealth tethered to the golden trinkets you carry. Scholars of yore often ponder whether the legendary Midas truly turned all he touched to gold, or if his tale was a symbolic nod to the metal's hypnotic allure. Gold isn't merely a monetary token, but also a bubbling brew of stories steeped in the human experience. Picture yourself bending over a river, just like countless prospectors have, over the centuries, panning for glittering flakes among sandy pebbles. Each shimmering speck carries with it the weight of hope, desperation, and dreams, an alchemy as old as time. In places like ancient Egypt, gold was crafted lovingly into intricate jewelry and buried alongside pharaohs to accompany them into eternity. It's almost as if the ancients believed this precious metal held the key to the afterlife, a ticket to the gods themselves. One cold evening, as you huddle by the fireside in a small medieval village, you might overhear elders speak of gold's magical properties, whispered through folklore. Some might say these tales were merely born from fiercely imaginative minds. Yet you can't help but wonder if there's a grain of truth hidden within them. After all, gold stood as a silent witness to the construction of iconic empires and the collapse of others. Was it this steadfast metal that held the power or the belief people placed in it? Around the bend of historical anecdotes, you find yourself traversing lush grasslands and desolate wastelands alike. You come across thrilling stories of adventurers and visionaries, the rumblings of revolts, and the soothing quiet of small moments that lifted generations through hardships. In each twist and turn, gold has been the storyteller, the keeper of memories, its value transcending mere material wealth. Even today, historians spin tales about the Majorcan navigators of the Mediterranean who exchanged bits of gold with early Eastern traders. In their journals, they obsess over the puzzling routes and exchanges unsure of the countless details lost to time. But what remains clear is how gold connected distant communities, laying networks that would support them through future strife. And just like that, you journey still further into tales of war and conquest, where golden coins lined chests that bolstered armies. The metal stood at the crossroads of conflict and peace, its sheen as persuasive as any rousing speech. Did it truly tip the scales of battle, or was it the motivation it stoked within man's heart and mind? Listening intently, you lean into these stories, their woven threads creating a fascinating tapestry. You consider how gold transcended beyond carving into currency and jewelry. It was crafted into symbols of power and faith, like crosses held by clergy, as they traveled to newfound territories. These artifacts echoed promises of hope and redemption, taught lessons of sacrifice and fervent belief. As the invisible hours tick by, the stories grow richer, the warm chestnut hue of the fire casting gentle shadows that flicker playfully. You hear tales of famed alchemists laboring over fire-lit furnaces in unyielding quests to transmute base metal into gold. The characters in these tales, often driven by a thirst for knowledge as well as wealth, are notorious for traversing the fine line between myth and reality. Did any of them succeed, or were their concoctions nothing more than fanciful dreams? Amidst these stories, a surprising tradition emerges. You learn of cultures that valued gold, not just for its immediacy or ostentation, but for its capacity to incite unity. During times of famine, it was gold, passed hand to hand, that sustained families and kindled community ties, more binding than the strongest of ropes. Anatolian mythologies tell of such times, though scholars today debate the authenticity of every story told across generations. As you rest by the fire's glow, thoughts adrift on this golden current of time. You reflect on how small and grand gestures alike have pressured and preserved this precious metal. The hearty glow dimming to soft embers cradles you gently back, and you can't help but realize that gold, with its lustrous history, feels like an old, comforting friend. It may shimmer and gleam, but its true value dwells in the hearts and minds of those who have held it close. As you begin to slowly drift into sleep's embrace, you appreciate the gentle twists of past and present around you, the constant presence of gold nestled in its midst. Its story, like your evening journey, ebbs slowly, gracefully, bringing you into quiet, restful slumber where dreams can freely flourish. You find yourself in a medieval village, the air thick with the sweet yeasty smell of freshly baked bread from the stone ovens dotting the landscape. Every morning the sound of crackling fires and the sight of flour-dusted figures bustling about the communal ovens signal the start of another day in the life of the village. This is the simple yet essential heartbeat of the community, where bread isn't just food, it's currency, a binding promise between the peasants and their lords. Imagine this for tomorrow. You owe a hefty tribute of bread to the local lord. It's an expectation as regular as the sunrise, but as heavy as a wet woolen blanket on the shoulders of every peasant. You and your fellow villagers gather around the ovens, vast structures hewn from stone that have weathered many a storm and many a burst of heat. There's a comfort in their permanence, even as you chuckle softly to yourself, contemplating what would happen if these massive ovens were to falter and leave the village without its daily bread. You probably won't survive this, not without some serious consequences from the Lord. As you go about your tasks, there's a hushed murmur of superstition. Someone mentions the stone ovens were built with a special kind of magic. That's why they've lasted so long. Historians still debate whether these beliefs were rooted in any reality, but they linger in whispers amongst the villagers, lending the ovens an aura of mystery and awe. Today, however, things take a different turn. As often happens with things we take for granted, one of the primary ovens gives a troubling, ominous groan before refusing to heat up. The village miller, usually calm and composed with a white dusting of flour in his hair, is now ruffled like a bird in a storm. His eyes dart from the massive brick structure to the rising sun, each moment of delay melting away chances of meeting the bread tithe, due to the Lord by evening. In this medieval ecosystem, a broken oven is more than inconvenient. It's a ripple in a precarious balance. The Lord's patience is legendary for its brevity, and a failure to provide the expected bread could spark a sequence of events that would see the villagers in the manor's hall pleading for understanding with bated breath. Yet the manor halls are no place for pleas that fall unheard. As the hours tick on, the air grows tense. A contingency plan is whispered through the streets, each household to bake what they can in their smaller private ovens, often barely used for more than a pie or two. It's a makeshift and unlikely solution, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Baker after baker tries their best, but the load is simply too much for these humble hearths to bear. While scurrying to deliver each lot in wheelbarrows and carts, you overhear an old villager tell a story of a long simmering feud sparked by a similar catastrophe in a distant village. How when the bread failed to arrive, the Lord took a lien off the villagers' livestock, setting off a feud that smoldered for years. Livelihoods were lost, pride wounded, and it all began with a pile of dough that never rose. Words turned to embers glowing beneath the veneer of civility, ready to reignite with the slightest breeze. Underneath this looming panic, the villagers begin unconsciously forming their own alliances, families banding together, whispering in hushed tones over shared loaves as they bake. The sun climbs higher, inching towards the zenith, and each failed batch feels like a nail hammering into the coffin of the village's peaceful day-to-day existence. Every now and then a small victory occurs, an unexpected rise in dough, the heat of a smaller oven, just enough to get a batch through. These moments lift collective spirits, even if just for a breath. You keep yourself busy helping where you can, hoping for some good news, like a wandering merchant hopes for hospitable weather on a long journey. Evening draws near the shadows of trees, lengthening over the struggling village. A solution may not be found today, but tomorrow is another opportunity. These ovens, they think well worn and beloved, essential to life here, will return to health, just as the village will find a way to meet the Lord's demands. So as you rest tonight, let the sound of crackling hearths and crickets outside your window be a reminder. Historians may still debate the ancient wisdom of cooking fire and flowers bond, but tonight you know this, that sometimes a simple loaf of bread holds the fate of many in its warming crust. As you drift to sleep, the weight of those ancient stones settled in your mind with the promise of restoration, repair, and the eventual healing of what was momentarily broken. Life will proceed with bread and oven whole again, and perhaps tomorrow will bring clarity and calm. Until then, you feel secure in the tilt of the world, ready to slumber and dream among ancient stones and simple hopes. The warm glow of early morning sunlight seeps through the narrow windows of the bakery, spilling golden light across rows of freshly baked bread. You find yourself immersed in the hum of activity, surrounded by the comforting scent of yeasty dough and crisp crusts. This busy workshop is bustling with skilled artisans, and at the heart of this organized chaos stands the master baker. He wears a flour-dusted apron, his practiced hands deftly shaping each loaf with a precision gained from years of dedication to his craft. In this world, baking is more than just a livelihood. It's an art form, a tradition safeguarded by the guilds who zealously protect their ancient secrets. They're the unseen guardians, ensuring that only the finest bread reaches the tables of the townsfolk. You've been granted an inside look into this fascinating realm, and you're about to discover how these guilds operated with an authoritative grace that both demanded respect and fostered excellence. As you move deeper into the bustling kitchen, you notice a group of apprentices gathered around the master, their eyes attentive and full of curiosity. The guilds played a significant role in their education, meticulously guiding them through the rigorous journey from novice to skilled baker. Much like the master before you, these apprentices will one day carry the torch, continuing the legacy of tradition and taste. Historians sometimes debate whether the guilds were more focused on preserving quality or merely protecting their own interests. However, you're beginning to see the symbiotic nature of their role. While they fiercely guarded their techniques, they also maintained the high standards that kept their products in demand. Reputation was everything. Occasionally you hear laughter and the clanging of pots, a reminder that even in this disciplined environment, joy and camaraderie thrive. The guild was known for more than just rules and regulations. They knew when to let loose too. These bakers had a knack for throwing extravagant feasts where their artistry truly shined in the form of giant decorative loaves that served as both centerpiece and sustenance. As the morning progresses, you witness the apprentices in action. Under the watchful eye of the master, they shape dough, learn to gauge the perfect proofing time, and understand the delicate balance of ingredients necessary for perfection. You're struck by the sheer amount of knowledge to be absorbed and marvel at the patience required. It's not just about memorizing recipes. It's an intuitive dance with temperature, humidity, and the unique characteristics of each batch. But not all is as serene as it seems. The guilds are vigilant, and they have little tolerance for cheaters who might skimp on quality or weight. It's amusing to learn that those who dared to deceive were once subjected to fines or public shaming, sometimes even donned with bread around their neck as a symbol of disgrace. You can't help but chuckle at the thought. Such punishments are a testament to how seriously these guilds took their duties. Your attention returns to the apprentices, who are now engaged in a playful banter over a particularly tricky technique. The guild, with its blend of stern discipline and opportunities for celebration, teaches them more than how to bake. It instills a sense of community and pride, ensuring that each loaf bears the mark of true craftsmanship. Amidst this vibrant scene, you reflect on the guild's enduring legacy. While many of their secrets have been lost to time, the core of their philosophy, the pursuit of excellence, the importance of mentorship, and the joy found in creation remains as relevant today as it was then. In a world where few could read or write, these bakers communicated through their senses, and their works spoke not in words, but in flavor and form. Your journey in this hive of skill and tradition draws to a close. Yet there's a lingering warmth, a sense of fulfillment, akin to pulling a perfectly baked loaf from the oven. As the day fades, and the last of the light dips below the horizon, you've come to appreciate that the guilds, with all their quirks and customs, served as the heartbeat of this ancient practice, a testament to human ingenuity and the power of shared knowledge. Although you assure yourself everything's fine, an irksome thought lingers. It is night, and the plate before you holds an uncut loaf of bread. You're momentarily caught in an ancient belief that slicing into bread as shadows stretch across the earth could unleash misfortunes. There were reasons for these old customs, however peculiar they seemed. In medieval times, the bread was more than mere sustenance. It was intertwined with the very essence of life, its dough rising like the sun, only to be pulled from the hearth's fiery belly, a humble miracle of everyday existence. Your fingers hover over the loaf, recalling an old tale where even the slicing of bread during a lunar eclipse was thought to manifest glimpses of doom. The bread becomes a talisman against the unknown, a small earthly reminder of protection amidst celestial whims. Flipping a loaf was just as foreboding. To disrespect the bread by turning it upside down risked inviting the ire of unseen forces, or perhaps just offending the family baker, whose hard work should be honored and respected. Historians still debate whether these superstitions were genuinely believed or simply woven into the fabric of daily life as a kind of moral edification, teaching the virtues of respect and patience. It is peculiar to consider that celestial events visible for centuries within the star-studded night sky prowled about villages, sending shivers down the spines of those who dared cook or toil beneath their enigmatic glow. You can't help but smile thinking of how medieval folk treated such occasions, eclipses and comets, as signs of change or omens. The rarity of celestial spectacles held immense power, capable of shifting the weight of beliefs, much like the Earth's shadow claims the moon during an eclipse. As you sit in the dim light, you ponder the timelessness of these beliefs. They hold a mysterious power, much like a comet passing over a dark village, making folks hold their breath. Scholars have long recorded these beliefs, noting how villagers might gather to watch the sky, with a mixture of awe and dread, whispering tales of bread, as though it harnessed some special energy granted by the heavens themselves. You wonder at the resilience of these old stories, the way they cling on like ivy on castle walls, becoming entwined into cultures long after their origins are blurred, just as a comet trails its light across the sky, its endpoint as mysterious as its beginning. The stories told around fires became a connective tissue to history, a method of passing down caution and wisdom in equal measures. Looking at the uncut loaf, you can't help but feel a connection with that distant past, recognizing that our human need to seek meaning, even in the simplest of objects like bread, binds us through time. Isn't it fascinating, the notion that bread, a staple of life, could also be a harbinger of fate? Tonight you decide is a time for leaving the loaf uncut, at least until morning light returns, banishing shadows and bringing back the clarity of the day. The gentle sound of the house settling wraps around you like a cozy blanket. And perhaps this, too, is a reminder that while the world beyond the window may shift and turn under the celestial dance of planets and stars, some rituals baking bread, gathering in kitchens, sharing tales, remain the same, as comforting and mysterious as ever. In the quiet of your thoughts, you drift the weight of the loaf in your hand, reassuring in its ordinary presence, like a lullaby from ages past. And as your eyes start to close, you imagine what stories your ancestors might have whispered on nights like this about bread and omens, starlight and shadows, while sitting by the glow of a crackling hearth. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Feel free to comment where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always nice to know where these stories reach. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. In this medieval kitchen, you find yourself amidst the steady rise and fall of a baker's routine. You stand in a space not too big, the air thick with the comforting aroma of dough. Your feet shuffle lightly on the cool stone floor, feeling the tiny grains of leftover flour sprinkled about like fairy dust. Practice and patience forge the path of the baker here, with early mornings dedicated to the rhythmic process of kneading and shaping loaves. Their hands move with a grace practiced through generations, each twist and fold a testament to the tradition passed down through families. Historians still debate whether every family truly had their own secret method, or if these tales were woven from the same strands of yeast and whispers. Closer to the hearth you watch the flames dance merrily, crackling and popping with a life all their own. These ovens built with patience from clay and stone held secrets within their hallowed arches. It is said the art of baking depended not just on skill, but on understanding the nuances of how heat curled and shifted within that cavernous belly, a knowledge lost now to time. While you trace a fingertip through the flour-dusted countertop, you think about how bread's importance reaches far beyond its humble appearance. In these times, it is the core of daily meals, a simple pleasure, yes, but a vital one. It's there you'd find yourself chewing thoughtfully eyes, not just on the loaf, but across the room, on whoever was there to share in this bounty. And what of the bread police? Imagine the solemn men officials charged with ensuring no one messed with the scales or diluted the flour with lesser grains. These enforcers wielded their power to protect consumers from fraudulence, a little too seriously, some might argue. Their echoes remain today in consumer protection laws, a somewhat odd but delightful connection to a time when food was both a necessity and a declaration of power. As you lean near the warmth of the oven, marveling at modern ovens' ancestors, it strikes you how bread connects ages, standing resilient against the passage of centuries. The loaves now steaming gently on those wooden racks mirror life's cycles, proofed, baked, and shared just as your ancestors might have done. In that glow, you might contemplate how ovens marked the heart of homes, serving not just as a place for cooking, but as a hub of family stories and daily events. Titles may not have come with bread, but respect surely did. You sense the pride embedded in each loaf, a warmth almost tangible, as satisfying as the last crusty bite. Here, under the cloak of medieval night, with only the soft hum of activity around you, the world seems exquisitely small, bound together by shared humanity and love for the simplest of things. You can't help but find reassurance in knowing that, be it past or present, bread remains a comforting presence bridging our disparate lives. The fire's crackle begins to subside, as does your spirit, leaning into the evening's calm, as the day's adventures temper the oven's warmth into gentle embers. You notice now the ebb, a gentle slope into night, inviting you to seek rest, just as bakers do when their work is done. It is a reminder that each day brings its toil, yet ends in the comfort of homes and hearths. Even in this quiet historical journey, time bends to the present, connecting you back, yet anchoring you to the now in the lull of night, a transition as natural as the baking process itself. The tale softly winds down, the words trailing off like a breath of wind through cooling coals. You feel the historical vibrancy ebb into a serene night song promising dreams, woven with strands of comfort and warmth. The cozy echo of the medieval oven begins to fade, leaving you with the impression of shadows dancing against stone walls. And in this soft transition, the story settles like flour dust on the ground, as you too prepare for a peaceful slumber under the watchful, gentle gaze of a timeless, comforting craft.